Okay, you guys, so this is Magnetism 101. Ken Wheeler says there is no north or south pole, there's just the inverse of counter space. So what does that mean?
Counter space is the dielectric field, and you can't understand magnetism unless you know what dielectricity is. Dielectricity is rest and stillness, or inertia and acceleration. It's rest and stillness when it's at the plane of inertia, but it's inertia and acceleration when it's the return of energy. When it's the release of energy, it's magnetism because it creates space. It's force. When it's dielectricity, it's the source of where that force comes out of. It doesn't just go out of the top into the bottom, it simultaneously comes out of the bottom into the top. We're talking about the energy, the ether source. This ether energy, it moves in a right turning fashion, coming in left, moves also right out the bottom, also comes in left. It's all moving in one direction, this whole thing. But see, the electron is not just going around the center of the atom, because that means the magnetic field should just be going outside of the magnet, the cube. The magnetic field does not just exist outside the magnet going left to right. The magnetic field goes in, through, and out of the magnet, but it doesn't just vortex and tornado in the top and out the bottom. It actually vortexes and tornadoes into the bottom and out of the top. So there's a tornado and a toilet on both sides. The tornado is the red lines. The tornado is sucking things in from the bottom and spreading them outwards, sucking them in the center and spreading them outside here. So the tornado is spreading outwards in both sides. And you have a toilet that is flushing and sucking in here and flushing and sucking in here. So you have two tornadoes and two toilets, as I like to say, as an analogy. So the source would be the plane of inertia. It's the non-Cartesian nexus, which means the non-physical point where everything that is physical comes from and returns to. Think about the center of a black hole. So we are told that the center of the Milky Way, the black hole, is constantly sucking all things to the center. One day, our solar system, along with Earth, will get sucked into the center. Well, the Milky Way's galactic core, the black hole, is not just sucking things in, it's also producing millions of tons of hydrogen. It's shooting something called the astrophysical jet stream both out of the north and south pole of that galactic disk called the Milky Way galaxy. So at the center of the Milky Way, there's a black hole. It's producing, meaning it's shooting out millions of tons of hydrogen out the top and bottom, and that energy goes back to the center to get sucked back in. It's recycling. It's called the generation and regeneration of matter. It's basically the snake eating its tail. It's coming out, and then it comes back in. This is the Ouroboros snake eating its tail, and it also goes like this. How your atoms work, there is no electron going around. The electron is just one unit of discharge. You just have repelling and attracting, which is output, and input, which is the release and return of ether energy or source. So you have force, source, and form.
The center of the magnet is the source of the magnetic field. So what you have is the source as the plane of inertia. The magnetic field is not just around the magnet, it is inside and outside of the magnet. You have a source and a spiral going above and below, and from that you get the inverse of counter space.
You have a soul, this is your heart. You have a mind, which is if you look at it from the side, it's your left and right brain. It's the angel and demon on either side of you telling you to do good or bad. And you have a crown and a root chakra. You have a higher mind and a lower mind. Where's your mind? Is your mind over matter, or is your mind in the gutter? So you have a good and bad mind. Your mind is not your soul, and your soul is not your body or your mind. You are not your body or your mind. You are the soul, the source, the stillness, not your mind that is always moving and thinking about the future, which causes anxiety, and thinking about the past, which causes depression. There is only the now. Your body is the bubble, which is both negative and positive. It's the repelling and attracting forces that come out of the neutral point, which create your corpus body. So you have a corpus spiritus anima, which is a body, mind, and soul. Magnetism is the spiraling motion. Your spirit is your mind. Your soul is the source, the anima, which animates the spirit. It's the power behind the mind. And the bubble, the body, is the corpus. It is the repelling and attracting the radiative and gravitative forces combined to create the perpetual motion of the magnetic field. Magnetism creates magnitude. What does this mean? The magnetic field, the repelling force of a magnet, is a dimensional force. That force creates dimension, creates space, the illusion, the appearance of space, the feeling of space. So the center is no thing, and from this center, magnetism extrapolates itself into and as the toroid. Ken Wheeler says duality is just the inverse of counter space, which is the plane of inertia. And from that, you get magnetism going above and below the two mid pressures or the two high pressures. Santos says the M is for man and the W is for woman. But man and woman, the two genders, come from the genderless source center that we come from. This is the unmanifest, and man and woman are the manifestation of the unmanifest. In other words, you have the conscious and the subconscious, and this is the unconscious. That source center that is no thing. These are two things, and this is no thing, but it's not nothing, because there's never nothing, there's always something. And this nothing is everything. These are something. So mag means to move. So in Sanskrit, mag means to move. Magnetism is the release of energy. It is force in motion, dimensional force, spatial force. It's the radiative force, aka magnetic repulsion. There is no magnetic attraction. That's called dielectric acceleration. It's the return of energy. The plane of inertia is rest and stillness of energy. It's ether at its primordial state. Magnetism has a source center. It has a force field going in and around it. Two mid pressures and two high pressures, which creates the body. That high pressure must go back in. Magnetism is the creator of space, while the dielectric field is the eraser of space. The dielectric field is the lowest pressure zone, and magnetism is high pressure, so the disturbance of magnetism creates the torus field, while the pulse or the suction of the dielectric field, the inertia of dielectricity, wants to erase that. This inertia wants to bring that moving energy to rest. So that moving energy would be called output or discharge. J.J. Thomson, the discoverer of the concept of the electron, said that electrons are not particles, they're just 1 unit of dielectric discharge. They're just pulses of energy called 1 unit of dielectric discharge, an electron, where a proton would be 1 unit of dielectric charge. So the electron is output, the proton is input. So you have neutral, negative, and positive. The negative particle would be called a negatron or an electron, and the positive particle would be called a positron or a proton. Proton is charge, electron is discharge. Input, output, black hole, and white hole. Everything is a black hole and a white hole. Even the sun doesn't just radiate, it is pulsing, it is a torus field. Santos says they call the sun Apollo because it is an apple. It is releasing outwards and inwards as everything does. All is atum, and the sun used to be called Aten, and Aten was an atom. So up and down and all around, the sine wave isn't just up and down, it is actually helical. It's actually three-dimensional. Ken Wheeler calls it a three-dimensional S-curve, and it curves as it curls. Curving inwards, in and out, it's also curling. So it curves as it curls, thank you Nassim Haramein, and this is called the right-hand rule of magnetism. Everything is turning right, even the mid-pressures. Those mid-pressures they stay above or below the plane of inertia, where the high pressure goes all the way around. Whatever way the magnetic field goes, whatever way your thumb is pointing would be the North Pole. And there is no North Pole. There's just the inverse of counter space. Everything is turning in one direction. What is an atom? It's a magnetodielectric dynamo spinning at 1 trillion cycles per second. Compound magnetism and dielectricity, low energy cyclic circuits. Magnetism is the release of energy, the radiative force, aka magnetic repulsion. Dielectric acceleration is the return of energy, aka magnetic attraction, and the plane of inertia is rest and stillness of energy, aka ether, at its primordial state. If the electron is output, we call that 1 unit of dielectric discharge or radiation. And if the proton is input, we call that charge. So this is basically radiation and gravitation, which together create the hybridization of electrification. So electricity is positive and negative. It's the sine wave. It's spring, summer, fall, winter. Neutral, positive, neutral, negative. So the atom must come to the neutral point and pick up inertia. So radiation is redshift, centrifugal divergence, right turning, and blue shift is centripetal convergence, left turning.